How does a high school student getting ready for college envision the AI future? AI-powered education is next. We are here with a high school student who is getting ready to head off to college soon. And Reid just recently won a local contest for Rotary with his essay, which all dealt with AI. And Casey and I thought, what a better place than to have Reid come and join us and talk about AI as he sees it both as a high school learner and a person who's getting ready to head out to college. So Reid, why did you choose AI, or why, what were your feelings that made you develop that essay on AI?
So AI is something that I'm going into the field of computer science. So AI is something I've naturally been interested in, especially now considering the recent incredible growth of AI technologies like ChatGPT and such, and photo generators. In addition, I have a large interest in philosophy and ethics. So when the prompt was to create a essay addressing a current situation and how to better improve it on the world, it seemed like a natural choice.
Exactly.
And he has this experience not only in, personal interest and investment, but he's also a part of an activity, speech, and debate where you get an opportunity to talk about current events. And he's in the category of discussion, which we're lucky to have him on our local speech team. But it's also a space where they talk about communication. And one of the topics this year is related to, really paying attention to the growing trends and what's changing and how are we communicating differently today.
So AI tends to come up.
Yeah. So pretty current event for him personally and professionally and in education. Pretty exciting stuff.
Well, great. So when you do, beyond philosophy and you do it on a daily basis for action base, how are you using as a high school student and a soon to be college student, like how are you using AI on a daily basis, if at all daily?
Mm-hmm. So I don't use it a ton as of right now, but I was last semester for I'm taking some college classes. I had a programming class, and AI is particularly ChatGPT, because there's a lot of definitions of AI, but ChatGPT, which is the big one today, is particularly useful for generating code. I know that a lot of today's software developers and programmers do have paid subscriptions to ChatGPT, simply because it's one of the things that it's very, very, very good at is troubleshooting code, debugging code. I remember the first time I couldn't figure out I had a bug in my code and I couldn't figure out what it was. So I copy pasted my code into ChatGPT, and literally within about 4 seconds it identified the issue and told me how to solve it. So there's a massive application there. I haven't done a lot of super direct usage with AI, but I feel like it's worth noting that there are many things that AI and machine learning is used in today, notably the fact or social media algorithms, which are a lot based around AI today, and other things relating to that, which I do have social media. So I feel like on a more direct level, I don't use it super ton right now, but it is, of course, all around in places from traffic lights to all sorts of situations.
So it's kind of interesting, you talk about how AI is everywhere, and you sort of don't really know oftentimes that you're using AI, or that I should say that something that you're interacting with is using AI, right? So I'm curious from your perspective, as a young person who is encountering AI probably on a regular basis, how do you feel about the need for transparency in companies and organizations or apps that you use? Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that?
So I feel like the need for transparency is especially important today as AI technology gets more and more, common today. I feel like a lot of people don't understand specifically how AI works. So when like specifically with regards to social media algorithms that I mentioned previously. For example, I have my laptop here. The Facebook algorithm has a lot of uses a lot of AI and our machine learning within that realm. So with regards to transparency, a lot of these companies don't release that algorithm because they're a competitive company. They don't want others learning their secrets, and in addition, it's just a lot of effort. So we don't really know how these programs are being trained. And the issue for that is, on an ethics perspective, the consumer cannot easily determine any ethical wrongdoings that are happening by the company and such. So in comparison to a transparent system, when people would be able to be like, hey, this is not, okay. For example, I know there's a large debate about AI art being created because it's very, very easy to, type in a prompt and come up with a very accurate AI image. And there's a lot of specifically copyright related concerns about what is being used to train. Like if you're training an AI on existing drawings and those people are not being compensated, is it stealing? There's a whole debate about that, which I won't go into here, but I feel like that's one of the main reasons why transparency is important, to be able to understand how exactly these work so that people understand them more and we can more approach it with a reasonable and ethical view rather than viewing it as this esoteric supercomputer that can make really smart decisions.
Mm-hmm. So connecting that to bias in many respects, do you have any feelings? I recently came across, and I think Casey and I'll be talking about it in our next episode, but when you have a bunch of data, because we think, oh, we're just collecting this data is raw, it's going to give us the answers. But do you have any feeling like when you think about who's sitting at that table reading that data, who should be at that table, Reid? When you think about it, like, is it to show that there's not bias, or to provide a possibility where that bias will not be embedded in that, just the numbers, because data is never seems to be unbiased because of who's interpreting. So who's at that table to help interpret that data?
I feel like, well, who's interpreting this data it really depends. And I feel like a lot of the ethical issue that comes along with AI today is that intersection between gaining the data at first and and interpreting that data. For example, I wrote about it in the essay, and I have an article here from the 2019, so it's a bit outdated and it predates like ChatGPT and such, but it's from the MIT Technology Review, and it discusses risk assessment AI with regards to recidivism, which is basically software that's intended to track the likelihood of someone who got out of jail or prison, and is how likely they are to commit a crime again, which does have justice applications. There's a lot of concerns with this, because when you have technology like this, it's easy to think, oh, it's an algorithm, it doesn't have bias, which is from a purely mathematical standpoint may be true. Obviously, it's an algorithm, it's doing math, but if you're using biased data and you're interpreting it in biased ways, the actual is going to have bias, which is really sneaky to notice. For example, the recidivism detection algorithm, which is mentioned in the article from the MIT Technology Review, discusses how this algorithm or artificial intelligence, which is intended to detect recidivism, disproportionately would state Black Americans as having a higher rate of recidivism, even though that's not true when accounting for things like socioeconomic factor, even when accounting for things like socioeconomic factors and related crimes and such. So the AI did have that sort of bias, and it is because it is being fed information from the American justice system and the American prison system. And there's a whole lot about the actual American prison system being having some bias against Black Americans. And when you take information and data from that and you apply it into the AI is then going to be biased. And this is just one example of ways that it's important to recognize bias as you continue and utilize your AI, because just because it's an AI and just because it's an algorithm doesn't mean it can't be biased. And you have to consider that, and developers have to consider that, the people at the table, which you mentioned, when they're creating the AI.
Yeah. And I think too, not just creating it, but when they're actually sitting there and interpreting that data, if you don't have like community members and people in social justice realms and people, if you don't have all of that group at the table, interpreting that data, I think then that bias comes at both, just like you said at the beginning, when that algorithm is being created, and also at the end when it's being interpreted. So good.
Well, and I know we're going to talk about this a little bit more, and in our conversation from podcasts we've listened to and books that we've read that have touched on this very topic, and I think what this comes down to in this conversation with a student who is utilizing AI technologies and who's exploring a future career that will be heavily reliant on that. He's got to have a seat at the table, and we want young people to be informed about the possibilities. And it's not, we talk about having AI used as an assistant for us or a tutor for us. And we want to ensure that when we're asking it to do these certain things, that it's not going to send harm our way, or for our young students sending them harm, and so I think it's interesting to have this conversation, to know that a young person who's going to be going into this field is thinking about that and concerned with that. Let's talk about, go ahead.
I was going to say another question I was just wondering about while we have you here is, do you have a suggestion or advice for teachers when it comes to AI?
I was just going to ask, what are the benefits in the classroom? As
you're exiting senior, like what would you tell teachers and give suggestions about?
So one thing that I like to say about this is there's a comparison I saw online which compares the advent of AI technology to the pocket calculator. For example, both of which are technology which realistically is only going to become better and is not going to go away anytime soon. So I feel like some professors and teachers have attitudes like, oh, you just know AI, whereas they would have been like, no calculators. But the thing is I feel like what happened for calculators is they worked around the technology. Tests became more like we have tests that you have to do with calculators now, but are still, intellectually challenging and such. And I feel like the same is with AI. I know that one of my English classes, we had to write an essay in class, which obviously you can't really do that with AI on hand easily. And I feel like just avoiding the usage of AI is short-sighted and not really beneficial. I feel like working with AI, and especially, but really understanding what it can do is going to be super, super paramount here. For example, as I mentioned previously, for like technical applications like programming and computer science, AI is really, really, really useful. And when one of my my college classes for Linux, the professor just says, you can use AI, you just have to state that you used it and and how you use it, because it is a very, very beneficial tool. The thing is it's not perfect, especially for things like analyzing literature and such, and generating quotes and such. So I feel like it should definitely be used, as it is a very, very powerful technology, especially with learning. I know it's easy to AI, and this is like a separate thing, but AI can't really do math really well, but what it can do is it can explain mathematical concepts. So it allows, if you allow students to use it to explain mathematical concepts, it allows, maybe to explain it on a more simple level than they couldn't just in the classroom. It has a lot of benefits there. You just have to be mindful of it and say, hey, it's not going to be 100% perfect all the time. This is sort of things that it can be used for. This is sort of things that it can't be used for. And teachers and professors today should, instead of just avoiding it, I believe that teachers and professors should structure their classes around it so that learning can still happen even with the usage of AI.
Yay! I didn't tell him to say that, by the way. I did not prompt that.
That's my own opinion.
Great advice and suggestions for all of us. And we wish you the very best as you go out. And you come back and visit us on our show when you're at college, and I'm sure you'll have many more insights to share with us. Thank you.
Will do.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys.